Welcome to this video. Today I want to speak a little bit about my lifetime experience, and I want to speak a little bit about the things I look at and which I find really sad. And for those people which do know me, they do know that I do inform about ancestors communication. And if you did not know that, now you know that. So I do inform about ancestors communication, universal communication, and communication with creatures which have lived as human beings before, and the communication methods they can use to communicate with living humans. So how others would call that, I inform about the communication with those spirits, or to be more specific, individual creatures which have lived as human beings before, which have lost their human body. One of the communication methods they can use is they can trigger the wind. They can use the natural environment to present themselves and to communicate with living humans. For example, they can trigger and canalize the wind specific to the tools you see behind me, and they can use a higher wind level if they want to agree to something. So they can send very specific wind waves, and then you see that the wind tools behind me are flying in the wind if they want to agree to something specific. They can send wind waves. So with wind waves, I mean that you then see that the tool is lifting itself up, or it's getting uplifted by the wind for a moment, just for a short moment, and then it should fall down again. Or they can canalize the wind and trigger the wind to a higher wind level for a longer period. If you watch the wind tools closely during the video, maybe you will realize that, because I'm connected in symbiosis with other creatures at this moment in time as well, other creatures which have lived as human beings before, so ghosts, how other people would call them. So today I want to speak about my general experience with regarding ancestors communication, and regarding the situation I'm in. I'm one of the living humans who can communicate with creatures which have lived as human beings before on a good level, so on a high level. And I'm informing about ancestors communication since a few years now. And I'm connected with creators which have lived as human beings before, so ancestors also just a few years. So I was not my whole life able to communicate with such creatures. Now I'm able to communicate with such creatures since round about 3.5 years, maybe 4 years, something like that. It's one of the first days which is warm in this year, so I'm gonna do an easy video, a relaxed video, and I just gonna jump from topic to topic in the video. So I'm gonna speak about different topics regarding my experience. First of all, when I was able to communicate with creatures which have lived as human beings before, so ancestors, my own ancestors, but also the ancestors of other families. when I realized that I'm able to communicate with them, I did start directly to inform in public about ancestors communication and universal communication. And therefore I did build up a website, which is seaembassy.com, just for your information. And on the website you will find many video documentations where such creators have presented themselves, have communicated to the public, have identified themselves, and many of these documentations were produced because so many creatures which have lived as human beings before and which have lost their own human body do exist, which would like to reach their living family members and which would like to be in the situation that their living family members, so the living humans, would understand how they can communicate with them. So which communication ways and methods they can use. But that is a very sad part of the video, because my lifetime experience there is very sad. Often I document situations when creatures, as I explained, present themselves to reach out for the living family members, and then if I can, I try to reach the living family members, I inform them about that, and I do send them, for example, the video material. My sad experience is that the most living families do not even react if they get video material where one of their own ancestors is presenting him or herself by using the natural environment, and if one of their own ancestors is trying to reach them with such video material. That is a very, very sad experience, because the fact is that a lot of these creatures are in the situation that they would like, as I said, to communicate with their living family members. They would like to be able to communicate complex with their living family members, and they potentially are able to do so, but the living humans are too blind to see that often. That's how I look at it with my lifetime experience. They are too blind and unable to understand the communication methods, but they also, the most of the living humans have not learned to communicate with their own ancestors or with creatures which have lived as human beings before. And that will lead to a situation that a lot of the creatures which have lived as human beings before do live a sad life after they have lost their human body, because they're in the sad situation that they can see their own living family members, the humans, that they can analyze what they are doing, and they would like to reach them, but they are unable to do so. And that is one of the reasons why I did start to inform about universal communication. So on the website you will find a video database. It's called the Ancestors Video Database, where ancestors did present themselves and did communicate by using the natural environment, and where in the Ancestors Video Database you only find videos which were specifically produced to give these creatures the chance to reach their living family members, and to give the living family members the chance to receive a live signal from these creatures, and to learn how they could communicate. And my sad lifetime experience is that I invited many people in the past years to do so, and the most of them do not react intelligently. They do not react in a way how it was specifically requested. And that will lead in the end to a situation that the creatures which have lived as human beings before, which have lost their own human body, stay in the same sad position, because they are unable to communicate with the living humans. And the living humans do stay in the same sad position because they decided non-intelligent to learn how they could communicate with creatures which have lived as human beings before, and because they did decide also in that way do not hear their own ancestors. That's how I look at that. So in the videos you see, you always find creatures which do present themselves by using the natural environment, and they also did invite their living family members to take very specific steps, to do specific things, like to learn how these creatures are able to present themselves and to communicate. But of course that can't work if the living humans do not react specific as it is requested. My efforts to inform about the topic are easily becoming a fail. So I had to witness in the past years very, very sad stuff regarding. I had to witness that a lot of creatures which have lived as human beings before they contact me, requested my help to produce such video documentations with them, and I did. And then I had to witness that the living family members do not react, even if they are specifically invited to a specific appointment or to arrange an appointment to learn the communication system and methods, and to give their own ancestors a chance them to present themselves again, to communicate directly with the living family members. Even if you invite them so specific, the living humans do not use that as my lifetime experience as one of the living humans. And I do not mean that nobody did react to the invitations, but like 99% or something did not react. So the percentage of living families which did not react after they received such invitations and video documentations from me, but invitation also from their direct family members, their ancestors, creatures which just have lost their human body, the percentage of families which fail to realize that and which fail to react intelligent is very, very, very high. And that is totally sad. And it, of course, do lead to a situation where I waste a lot of my lifetime when I try to help. That's a sad fact. And that you understand that better if I produce such video documentations with those or with creatures which have lived as human beings before, and if I invite the living family members, they do not react to that in a way that they then learn how to communicate with these creatures, then their position is not better in the future, and the position of their ancestors, of the creatures, is not better. So, for me, in my daily life, it will mean that a lot of creatures do contact me, request my help. Often I try to help them. I try to produce documentations with them so that their living family members get a live signal, get proof of their existence, or at least of their communication. And then the creatures leave again, like they leave the contact area, they leave the area where they can have contact with me for a moment, if you want to understand it like that. And if I contact them again after a while, they're also sad because it did not work. And in that way I have to witness that a lot of living families do let down their own ancestors. They do let down these creatures which have lived as human beings before, which have lost their human body, because they do not react to specific requests. And that is for me totally sad. It's something I cannot understand. It's something which drove me crazy for a while. I can speak it out like I see it, because it made me mad. Some of these creatures which have lived as human beings before, which have lost their human body, are totally sad because they are unable to communicate with their living family members. And to have contact with these creatures in a situation where they're totally sad, to get to know them in a situation where they're very sad, and then they're leaving sad again, just because their living family members do ignore the invitations and the option to learn to communicate with them, is in my eyes a disaster. And it's sad in general, because I think in that way the human species do lose a lot of chances to learn from creatures which have lived as human beings before, as long as the living humans lose the chance to learn how they could communicate in general.
Eier auch?
Um,
Kann man auch ohne Eier haben?
for me, there's another detail I want to speak about.
Große
See,
Runden, ne?
I have contact with my own ancestors. Okay, so
Nein,
if
wir
I
wollen-
get
wir
to
wollen
know
uns
another
teilen.
creature which do not belong to my family, but which have lived as a human being before,
Okay, gut.
in the first moment,
28.
of course it is
Können wir
difficult
diese-
to identify a creature.
Geht das? Dann würden wir um 17
So
Uhr eins hier
I'm in the
abholen, ja?
luxury position that my mom, for example, the creator, because she also have lost her human body already, do check for me identities as well. But I also look very sad at the situation that in these video documentations I spoke about, which you find on the website seaembassy.com, the Ancestors video database, a lot of these creators invited their living family members to send questions to identify them correct. So to do something like a test with them in a live communication, or at least to send the questions to me so that they then can prove the identity in another documentation which would follow. But also to that specific request, none of the living families do react, or not none, but 99% of the living families which receive such data do fail again. And for me, it is absolutely mad, it is absolutely crazy that I'm in a situation that I look at I look at these easy requests, and I cannot understand how other humans can behave so stupid, so ignorant. If they would have the chance, if they would follow these easy requests, if they then would have the chance to potentially communicate with their own ancestors, their own family members which have lived as living humans before. It's something I really cannot understand. It's totally embarrassing, and in my daily life it makes me totally sad. I give you an example. A creature which have lived as a human being before is contacting me and is telling me, "Niall, can we use such documentation because I want to reach my living family members and I want to send them a live signal and I want to invite them to contact you," so me, Niall, "that you then can teach them how you can communicate with me, because then they can learn how they could communicate with me as well. And I invite them to send identification questions, test questions to you, so that I, them, the creator, which do not have a human body anymore, can prove my identity." So I did produce them, I would produce them such a documentation, like you can see them on seaembassy.com. I do send them to the families, or at least I contact the families and do send them the link, or give them the advice where they can find the link, and then the living family members do not react. They do not come to specific requested appointments, they do not send specific test questions, they do nothing of all that what's requested. And that fail is a fail of 99% of the people. I did contact in the past years with creators which have lived as human beings before, which wanted to speak to them. It's a fail of 99% of these people. And that is something, if you would be in my position is easy. I have contact with these creators which have lived as human beings before, which have lost their human body. And if you would be in my position, you would become very, very upset, because you realize that you are unable to help these creatures, even if they're able to communicate, even if they're able to present themselves, even if they're able to solve such test questions, even if they're able to identify themselves and to bring proof with the knowledge only them can have. Even if all that's the case, the living family members do not react. So in that way, they let the voice of their own ancestors die. In that way, they let their own ancestors down. And that is what I had to realize for years now. For years. And I look at that and it is impossible for me to understand. I was in a situation in my life one day that my mom died and I wanted to speak with her. So I did not accept that the fact that I should be unable to communicate with my mom just because she had lost her human body. And I was right. I did fight. I am able to communicate with her today, and she's unable even to produce data. She's even able to produce such data that other people could understand that. She's able, for example, to speak by using the natural environment. For example, by canalizing the wind. So, of course, if you would be me, and if you would be a human who did really fight up to a point where I gave myself on to speak with one of your own ancestors, and you do succeed like I did, of course, then you do not understand the others which just fail and which do not listen. And that is my daily life since years. And as long as that's gonna be the situation, my life gonna be sad. Because I'm in contact with so many sad creatures which would like to reach their living families. So the ignorance of the living families is the guarantee, is nearly a guarantee to make me sad in the future also. Because they do not react even if you try to. So sorry, I had a cigarette in my hand and it did fall down. I'm gonna smoke a cigarette now. So that is a very important point in my life, which makes me sad on a daily basis. It even leads up to a point that I look at everything I try to inform about ancestors' communication as a faith. Because as long as these creatures are unable to communicate with their living family members directly, because they are not willing to learn how they would be able to communicate with them. As long as that's the case, I look at everything I did to inform about ancestors' communication as a faith. Even if you find many videos, more than 100, online where creatures which have lived as human beings before produced documentations with me, where they presented themselves and where they did communicate clearly. Even if that's the case, if the living family members do not react to that specific like it is requested, it is a faith. Maybe some of the families have realized the documentation and what they do mean, and maybe they have seen that as a life signal. That's good. But if I look at the percentage what would be possible, it's like 1% good of the 100% which could be reached, because they could be able in a week to communicate with their own ancestors. And the fact that these creatures I'm in contact with, which have lived as human beings before, are unable to communicate with their own living family members just because they do not listen, and just because they do ignore such invitations, is totally sad. Because often I do not have contact with such creatures once, no, often I do have contact with them a couple of times. Which means I meet them again in a communication sense, if you want. And of course, they came sad the first time. If I'm gonna meet them the next time, they're gonna be sad as well. And their living family members, they could change that, and they're not doing so. And that is something which I can't understand, and which really brought me up to a point that I really went crazy because of that. Because it's total antisocial behavior from their living family members. That's how I look at it. But maybe it's just the reason is that the living human species is not intelligent enough to use the chances. Maybe they just do not understand how easy they could use the chances, or at least try. So be aware, if I ever invite you to an appointment in Bonn with one of your ancestors potentially, you should come. You should come, you should organize that appointment, you should come to the place where it is requested, otherwise it will be a fail, and you will fail to learn universal communication, most likely. Most likely. That's what I think. Because so many humans are unable to communicate with ancestors. So, the next thing, so I'm gonna speak about this identification stuff a little bit. And I'm gonna speak about also another topic which I call body sharing. Creatures which have lived as human beings before, they can connect in symbiosis to human bodies and they can influence human bodies. For example, a creature which has lived as a human being before can connect in symbiosis to a human body and trigger the feelings of the human. A lot of people make that experience, but when I look at that, I realize often that some of the people maybe do realize, okay, I was in contact with a creature which have lived as human beings before and which did trigger my feelings, or which did trigger my thoughts, because that's what they can do if they're connected in symbiosis to a human body, and that can be used for communication. But if I look at the information I find in the internet, I also look at the huge fail. Because, for example, there is someone now and his body is getting influenced, or her body is getting influenced. And she's feeling very happy for her, because she's realizing that her body got influenced by a creature which have lived as human beings, as a human before. So the nice feeling the human is feeling with the human body is then very nice, potentially, unusually nice, surreal nice, okay? And then the people freak out about that. But I realize that a lot do not realize that all the creatures which have lived as human beings before can do that. So if you have a contact with a creature which have lived as a human being before, or as a ghost, however people would call that, you have to check their identification. You need to ensure that you're speaking to a specific individual. And often people have that minimum lifetime experience that their body got influenced, but the nice feeling could lead to a situation that they are not critical in an intelligent way anymore. So they do then not check the identification of these creatures correct. And I look at that as totally sad, because with my lifetime experience, as someone who's able to communicate with such creatures, and as someone who's communicating with a lot of these creatures, you also have the lifetime experience that some of these creatures do lie to living humans, or do act like they would be another creature. So what I mean is they also lie sometimes about their identification. And if people do not learn to check the identification with tests, like the police would do, with the interrogation, then it's a failure. Because feelings transfers, knowledge transfers, can be done without identification. It can be done by a creature who's connected in symbiosis to a human body, identifying him or herself wrong as another creature. And that is something living humans have to understand as well. It is a very, very important point, because creatures which have lived as human beings before, some of them do lie very often. So it is not very unusual for me as someone who's communicating with such creatures or let me say different, I had to meet in the past some of these creatures which do lie, let's say 50-60% of the time. Even that can happen. And I met in the past creatures which have lived as human beings before, which identified themselves as other creatures. So, if humans do not understand to deal with that, to exclude the opportunity that they become the victim of a lie, then it is a failure. It's the fail of these living humans. And of course, it's a fail of these creatures which behave so antisocial that they like to live in groups. But it do happen, so that's a fact, and then people have to learn to deal with that. And that's why what I said before, that's why identification questions would be often very important for also for people like me, to ensure for the living family members how they can see it later them that the creature is the correct creature and not another creature identifying him or herself wrong as a creature who he or she is not. So universal communication with ancestors or with creatures which have lived as human beings before is not so easy. It is complex. It is like you would communicate with living humans. These are individuals, they behave individually. So one creature can be nice, another one can be totally bad and mean. One creature can be honest, another one can be a liar. And people have to realize that. Because if people do not learn to react intelligent to that situation in general, then potentially their own ancestors losing their voice. If people do not realize that it would be possible to find solutions for that, then the ancestors in general easily lose their voice if they try to reach their living family members. If people, so humans do judge that's too much work, that's wrong. That's wrong. It is a lot of work to identify creatures correct. It can be very, very hard. That is nothing easy, it is hard work. Even with feelings transfers, knowledge transfers, everything what is possible, that is hard work to understand that correct, to identify that correct, and to identify the creatures correct. And for me it is totally sad that I had to witness as someone who's informing about ancestors communication and who's trying to help a lot of individuals. Also with the support from some specific individuals which have lived as human beings before. As someone who's trying to help there in the public and who's trying to inform families as soon as I have contact with one of their family members, it's totally sad that I had to witness that living family members do not react to that information's intelligent. And intelligent would be if identification questions, tests are requested, send the tests and nothing else. If an appointment in Bonn or in Guatemala or wherever is requested, go there. Because the options are there. And I could not see that people do that. I could not see that people do react intelligently. I'm using Facebook, as many people do. Often I'm in this ghost groups. So groups where the topic is communication with creatures which have lived as human beings before. And I see many videos also from people which are ghost hunters and all that. I could not see, or at least a very few, but I could not see good videos where the creatures which have lived as human beings before really can bring proof of their identity. It is always in this video material, if these ghost hunters and these paranormal people run around and film those situations, they always leave it on the level of believing. But for me as a creature who was born as a human, for example, if I lose my human body later and if I want to communicate with one of my family members, I do not want them to believe. I do not want that. I want them to check my identity, I want them to ask questions, I want them to ensure my identity, and I want to have a high level of communication with them and not a low level where other creatures could act like me. And so I looked even at the scene so at this group of people which are open for communication with creatures which have lived as human beings before, I look at that and I ask myself, when do these people do realize that the level must be much higher to practice a good communication? You need a backup system to check the identity always if you deal with individual creatures which have lost their own human body. Because it is not so easy to identify such creatures, and it is not good to just believe. If you just believe, you will come into a situation that other creatures which also have lived as human beings before and which have lost their human body maybe gonna contact you and just gonna mess around with you with lies. And then they may be gonna act as other creatures. And that is a totally weird situation that living humans do not understand that. Let me specific, if I'm on Facebook, if I'm in these ghost groups and groups which do where you find such documentations, where that is the topic of the Facebook group. I often read that people speak about their lifetime experience, for example, that they had a beautiful feeling in one moment which was so supernatural that they suggest it's their grandma or their granddad or so on, so on, so on. But that's a level of believing. That's not a level where you have proof. And the level for all humans should be to get proof always. And that is also a point in general, what I spoke about now, I really cannot understand. I cannot understand why living humans in the mass, so many of the living humans, do act so stupid. Then if I'm in these Facebook groups, I can see from the postings of a lot of people that they think as soon as they have contact with a creature which have lived as human beings before, that they would always speak the truth because they have lost their human body. No, they are individuals. If you ever met a human who did lie to you, you also will meet other individuals which gonna lie to you, no matter if they have lost their human body or not. That is easy to understand normally. So I cannot understand why humans which do have contact with such creatures do not raise the level. That they do not use a higher level, a higher security level to check that the informations are correct. That the identification of these creatures are correct. If you watch my videos where I communicate with creatures which have lived as human beings before, which identify themselves as living humans, as creatures which have lived as humans before they lost their human body. You have to understand the following. I'm also communicating with my own ancestors. I let my own ancestors check their identity. It's like a back security check. No matter how they influence my human body. So no matter how much beautiful feelings they do trigger in my human body, I always try to check their identity best as possible. And I think for the human species, it would be a very, 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 very important point to understand that. Because it's the same with informations. For example, now creatures which have lived as human beings before, which have lost their human body, do communicate to living humans. They could transfer knowledge to heal illnesses. That's a good, nice information. But if humans do not learn to check that information, to work with that information, to do security checks in the communication with these creatures, to get demonstrations of what they can do. Because you need the demonstration, not only the knowledge, you also need the demonstration how they do. And I look at information streams in general from creatures which have lived as living humans to living humans which are able to communicate with such creatures. And I look at that and I think a lot of these people which are in contact with such creatures, maybe for a short moment, just maybe one moment in the lifetime, or maybe a couple of contacts, I look at that and I ask myself, when do these people realize that so much more would be possible? When do these people realize that all the feelings of the biological human body can get influenced and caused by other creatures connected in symbiosis to human bodies if they're capable of doing so? So the level is not that I as a creature in my human body can only trust on the feelings my human body will create, because other creatures can create such feelings, and they can do it truthfully for truthful communication, or they can, for example, trigger my human body that I feel I would have contact with my mom and I could identify her, but then it's not her. It's another creature like. So even that is possible. So the level for correct identification is very, very high. Very, very high. And if I look at all these Facebook groups where so many people are interested in the topic, but where so many people also do not realize that and just trust the feelings of their biological human body, I look at that totally sad, because that's a fail. That's a fail. They easily can become muppets of creatures which are able to connect in symbiosis to their body, which are able to trigger such feelings, which are able to lie with such feelings to the creature which was born in the human body, to the human. And that's what humans have to understand. So the level is, it is complex, and the level is that the human body can easily get influenced and triggered, and if you really want to ensure information, and if you really want to identify a creature, you should not trust all the feelings from your human body, because all of these feelings can get organized and specifically triggered by creatures which have lived as human beings. So they can get used to lie to you as a human. And if you're not sure that the information and the identification of such ghosts, such creatures which have lived as human beings is correct, you fail. And you open the door to be in the trap that such creatures do lie to you. In a lot of videos you could see that ancestors can canalize and use the wind if they want to agree to something. Maybe you have realized how strong they're using the wind at that moment in time when I speak about that. Can you put it up again if you want to agree to that? Yeah? Okay, let it down one time. Let it a little bit down. Okay, here's one tool. And there's one tool. This tool is filmed by another camera, hopefully. Can you let this down a little bit? So can you reduce the wind level to a lower wind level for a moment? Yes or no? Yes. So they will reduce the wind level a little bit. See, it's going down. And now, if you want to agree, can you trigger the wind again to a higher wind level? They're showing the star. In a few videos you will realize with the star side of this tool they can say yes. And now they're using a higher wind level to agree again. Because that's such an important point. Can you trigger the wind more? Let it fly a little bit higher? Like my hand area? Will you make that? From my perspective? So now they're gonna push it. See? They're gonna push it to my hand. See that? With that they do agree to that. And these are creatures which have lived as human beings before, which are connected in symbiosis to the natural environment, like they can connect to human bodies. Because our human bodies are part of the nature and they're open to get influenced like everything else what we see as humans as natural environment. So I'm gonna drink something, I'm gonna smoke another cigarette. It's a beautiful day. I told you I'm gonna do a relaxed video, and that's what I'm trying to do here. That kind of communication method, if ancestors use wind to communicate, or creatures which have lived as human beings before, so if they use wind by canalizing, by triggering wind for communication purpose, you can find many videos on siaembassy.com where you can learn that. If you watch the videos closely, be aware you find many different individuals communicating, presenting themselves like that, which have lived as human beings before on the website. There's also a video database for ancestors which are trying to reach their living family members. And please be aware, some of these individual creatures can use the natural environment very good, very specific. Others sometimes do it less specific, because they're all individuals. It's like with us humans. Some do speak very clearly, others do not speak so clearly. And some people can learn to speak clear, other people have it not so easy to learn to communicate clear towards other humans. It's the same with creatures which have lived as human beings before, if they connect in symbiosis to the natural environment, and if they influence that for communication purpose. So, what you have seen just a moment ago, what I presented to you, is that you understand that better. In the most videos where wind is used from creatures which have lived as human beings before, so ghosts, and you can see in the video that there is agreed that if they want to agree to something, to questions I ask them or to stuff I speak out, they can send wind waves, use specific for a short moment a higher wind wave, so that you then see specific before the wind level was low, then the creature said yes with a high wind level. Or if I speak a long sentence and they want to agree to that, they also can trigger the wind on a high level for a longer time. So it's in the most videos you find on the website, it's their method to say yes. What you have also witnessed here in this video is that the tool was used with the star part. These wind tools you see behind me have two sides. One side is plain, on the other side you see a golden star. And the reason is, if I ask specific questions, only them, if I communicate very specific with these creatures, they can say no with the side without the star, or yes if they show the side with the star. So the side with the star is the yes side. But that's only if I ask very, very specific questions, because in general, to keep it more easy for your eyes, the people which are watching the videos, they just trigger the wind and use a higher wind level if they want to say yes. And if the questions are important enough, then we work as a backup system also with the star side and the non-star side, so they can communicate with that a little bit more clear and more specific. So what people have to understand, I'm living a life, if you do not know my data, if you do not know these videos yet, and if you maybe have not listened to someone who's living a life like me, and a few humans do exist on planet Earth which live such life. I'm living a life, if I walk through the natural environment, all of that can get used by creatures which have lived as human beings before to communicate with me, including all biological human bodies, animal bodies and plant bodies. For example, if I speak with my mom, the creature which have lived as my mom in her human body before, she could potentially trigger a human to speak something out towards me, and then she is using that human body to speak to me directly. That is the level these creatures can use to communicate with those people which have realized that, which are open for such communication, and which have learned to practice that with them on such a high level. And because they are them doing that, and I as a human have learned to understand that, to see that, to outread that, to understand their communication input, no matter if they use human bodies, animal bodies, or the natural environment, like wind, which is part of the natural environment as the most people would see it. So ancestors, creatures which have lived as human beings before, if they are in the situation that they can connect to the symbiosis, and if they're in a situation where the circumstances are, they're allowed to influence the symbiosis. That's how you can understand it. There have to be specific circumstances that they're able to do so. What you have seen here in the video, where they triggered the wind, it's teamwork. So it's not only my mom which can communicate with me, she's also getting support from other invisible creatures, for us as humans invisible, from other creatures which will support her to influence the natural environment. That's an important question. You see, the wind level is low. Mom, can you agree to that by triggering the wind a little bit more? And now you see, can you trigger it more? Yes, that's great. And she's agreeing to that by shaking that thing and triggering the wind. Okay? That's how specific that communication can work. You could see that tool was hanging down, and then I requested that, and she did lift it up. Now it's uplifted by the wind, because she's using the wind with other creatures. They support her with that, and they canalize the wind to the tool, and then it's lifting up. It's uplifted by the wind, and the wind is controlled by Mama and by other creatures. That's how you can get that. And that's an important information for all the people which do ask themselves now, well, I would like to communicate with my ancestors, and they should show themselves like that here, and they do not do that. There can be the logical reason for that they maybe do not have the support for that from other creatures in this biosphere. So maybe the circumstances of the situation do not allow your ancestors, there where you are, to reach you like that. And the next point is that if you are a human, you have to really learn to outread, to understand that communication, because there can be problems in the communication, so you have to learn to deal with all that. And if you have not learned that, you will be unable to realize that potentially, or to see that, or to understand that, even if your ancestors would try to reach you by this communication. And if I communicate, for example, with my mom now, that's also an important information. I do communicate with her by body sharing, which means she's influencing my human body for communication, and I can communicate with her in my human body. And also, beside that, she's using the natural environment to make that transparent to you. So there are always more than just one communication method which is used, a couple of them. And there is a double check system, often, not always used, but very often, which means before I upload the videos, I ask, for example, my mom again, was everything okay? Did I understood everything right? Was the identification okay? Was the identification right? All that stuff. And that is going on besides all the stuff you can see in the video material, if these creatures do present themselves and to communicate towards you, the living people which are watching my video material. My video material and the video material of these creatures. Because in a lot of these videos, you do not only see Niall, the creature in my human body, you do see, in that case, my mom was called Susanna, you do see the reaction from Susanna, from other unknown at the moment, and from me, Niall. That's how you can look at videos as soon as universal communication is part of the video material. So that's the first part of this video. I'm going to speak a little bit more about my lifetime experience in a moment, and I'm going to enjoy a short break. So give me a moment, and I'm going to drink something, I'm going to smoke a cigarette, and I'm going to switch off the cameras for a moment because of the storage and because of the battery. I sadly have not the financial possibilities to buy good equipment. That as a general information, in case you are a rich man or a rich girl, you can always invest in a situation where I then would be able to film better and to document much more universal communication, and you could contact me for that if you would like to spend your money on equipment, for example, because I really would need equipment to then be able to produce better video materials, better video documentation. So thank you for the moment, and the next part is going to follow in a second. So hello again, welcome to the next part of this video where I speak a little bit about my lifetime experience regarding ancestors communication and the communication with creatures which have lived as human beings before in the past years of my life. As you can see in the first part, creatures which have lived as human beings before can say hello, for example, by canalizing the wind stronger and triggering the wind stronger. And later in this part they also can say yes and agree to stuff if I speak stuff out, and if they see it the same way, and in that way you can catch their opinion if you outread the wind tools behind you. I'm going to use the camera one moment to present you all the area, and it was quite the same. There are some people in the background, they're coming and leaving, and that's the only thing which is changing in between. So this is the other wind tool filmed by this camera. There was another camera over here, but I told you I have a lack of equipment, so the battery is empty and I could not recharge it in a short break. And that is the area where I'm on here, the right one. It's a huge bomb with a lot of people, so in between people walk by. Even when I practice universal communication with ancestors, and it is possible that in between maybe people are gonna ask questions. That is possible, but Irma will quickly answer the questions and do not wonder about it. So, I did speak about some of my negative experience in the first part of this video, and there are some more negative experience, and so I'm gonna keep going with the negative experience. But you will later find also videos online where I speak positive life stuff, where I speak about positive stuff, so positive lifetime experience regarding universal communication and regarding the communication with creatures which have lived as human beings. I stopped the first part, as far as I can remember, with talking about the fact that people should understand that they have to identify individual creatures correct if they do contact them as ghosts or as creatures which have lived as human beings before but which have not a human body anymore at that moment in time. I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna jump to other topics as well, but I just wanted to make clear that's very sad what I had to witness there, that people do not react intelligently. Even if you communicate towards them, if you invite them, if you request their support to send, for example, test questions to identify them a creature better. A creature which maybe belongs to their family and which maybe wants to communicate with them, and which maybe wants to identify him or herself as a creature towards the living family best as possible for them. And if they do not send the test questions them, it is impossible for these creatures, even if they're willing to do so, even if they want to, and even if they're able to communicate, for example, by using the natural environment. I wanted to speak a little bit about, now I'm going to speak a little bit about my life if I walk through an area like this, or if I sit in a natural environment like this. First of all, I have a lack of equipment because I have no financial possibilities, and that is very sad. To capture everything I can see here, I would need round about 10 cameras, and you would be able to see much more. And I'm gonna present you what I mean with that, what I'm saying. For example, if I turn the camera around, you see this picture. And if I look into this direction, it is sometimes possible that when I'm sitting on the bench, I'm looking into this direction. So that is part of the picture which you see right now, what I see there. Okay? And the wind tools you hang behind me. So the answer is to maybe influence them and use a higher wind level to communicate with you, the people which are watching the video. But they also, maybe in between, do that over here. Look at this now. And now you can see that this huge plants to start to shake because more wind is canalized to this area. If you watch closely on the huge, hopefully the camera will capture it. Like this, it's a little bit better. I was looking at this area now, and now they start to shake this huge trees. So I spoke about a lack of equipment at the end of the last part. If you are interested in universal communication, I want to make the point clear. I would need your support in case you have financial possibilities. Because if I would be able to film like everything in the area where I am and where I practice universal communication, with more equipment, it would make it possible for these other creators which have lived with me before to communicate to people which are watching the video more to present more, to show themselves more clearly and better. Of course, the wind tool is nice, but imagine if I could film a whole forest and everything at the same moment. With 2 cameras, that is not possible, and that is the situation I'm in since years. Even if I have 3 cameras, that is not possible. I would need much better equipment and much more equipment to them be able to produce better documentations for you, the people which are watching the video. And with this equipment, the creators I'm in contact with, which have lived with human beings before, would come into the situation that they also could communicate much better towards the people which are watching the video, maybe potentially also towards their own living family members. For example, by using the whole area where I am, if I capture such documentation, if I produce such videos with them. So when I sit on the bench where I was sitting before, now you have an idea of everything I see. I see the whole area over here, and I can use all these plants by canalizing wind to communicate with me in the same moment. And all this is invisible for you because of a lack of equipment. Not because I wouldn't be willing to film that and I wouldn't be willing to put that online. I would do that, but I do not have the financial resources. Just one moment, I have to check the camera so that you can see. So, but at the moment my situation is since years that. At the moment I don't have the financial resources and I have a huge lack of equipment. Not a small, what you could see in the video here is weather control by creatures which have lived as human beings before. They can use the wind, like they use it now to communicate towards you, the people which are watching the video, if they agree to stuff. They can use also rain. I do not have cameras which are made to film in water or in wet conditions. That will lead to a situation where it's also impossible to film such stuff very well if that's happening. So that all that stuff is staying invisible to you. And if you're really interested in universal communication, if you want to learn more, you're invited to support me with financial backup so that them can buy better equipment, to them be able to produce better documentations and to inform better and more complex about situations when creatures which have lived as human beings before present themselves, and when they do communicate to the people which are watching the video. And then you could also see what I see when I sit, for example, like in a situation like this on a bench, and when I look into one camera. So at the moment, I give you an idea, I have at this moment in time 2 cell phone cameras and 1 action cam. The action cam, the battery is very bad, which means it's empty quickly. The first part was filmed with the action cameras. Now the battery is empty. Now only 2 cell phones are filming in one direction. But if you would like to understand how people like me are living, you would have to see everything I see. That's important to understand. You would have to hear everything I hear. The microphones I'm working with are microphones for 20 euro. So the cheapest stuff on the market. Not because I wouldn't be willing to pay for better equipment by myself, it's because I cannot afford it. By myself, I'm living on 400 euro a month at the moment, and in the past years I had many months where I had no money for myself, not even for food. So I'm looking very sad at a situation where I'm trying to inform about universal communication, and I always made that point clear, that I would need much better equipment to inform better about universal communication. And this equipment would be used by me, but also by creatures which have lived as human beings before, which have lost their human body, and which are living here in the area where I'm walking, in a situation where they would be able to communicate to the public, where they would be able to use the natural environment on a huge scale to communicate with living humans. But the fact is that I could not find people which did support me, intelligent and very specific, for example, for better equipment. So they lose their chance to do so, these creatures which have lived as human beings before. And they lose their chance to produce video documentation, to show that to you, the people which are watching the video, to the public, and potentially to their own family members. And that is very sad. And I am in this situation since years. And I look at that and I cannot understand it. If so many people are interested in universal communication, in communication with ancestors, or in communication with creatures which have lived as human beings before, and I do not find a little financial support to buy the equipment to inform about that topic, then I only can look at that situation as totally stupid, and I cannot understand it. And there are a lot of people which are interested in that topic. So if you are interested in that topic, and if you have financial resources, please contact me, because I would need some money to buy better equipment. That is for sure, and that is for sure since years. And I could have produced much more documentations with better equipment, much more creatures which have lived as human beings before, which have lost their human body, wanted to produce documentations, then you will find documentations online. And the reason for that is bad equipment. It's not that I'm not willing to produce such documentations with them, it's the fact that I'm working with a very slow internet. So where I work with the internet where I can upload one documentation, and the same time with a faster internet line, I could upload 2 or 3 documentations with 3 different individual creatures. If I have to work with such a slow internet line, 2 creatures minimum, at the same time lose their voice, even if they're willing to produce documentations to present themselves and to communicate to living humans. They lose their chance here to produce such documentations for you, the people which are watching the video. I'm working with a very shitty PC, a cheap one, which do not have enough storage to save a lot of video data. But that would be absolutely necessary to give more creators which have lived as human beings before the option to produce such documentations and to reach out for their living family members. So I look at the equipment I have, and it is a total disaster since 3 years. I'm communicating that, and I could not find anybody who really did invest in a better situation for me as one of the humans who's trying to help these creators which have lived as human beings before to produce such video documentations. To speak to you, the people which have lived, to speak to you, the people which are watching the videos. Because if they canalize the wind, if they trigger the wind, they speak by that method to you, the people which are watching the video. Beside the fact that I'm speaking in the video. So I look at that and it is very sad. A good situation would be that I could film with minimum 10 cameras the same moment. I give you an example. Here in Europe, that's a blackbird. You could see there a blackbird. Now it's flying away. Okay. You wouldn't have seen that if I would not have spent extra energy to stand up, to turn the camera around, to present it. A blackbird and the European mythology are the birds which are carrying souls to heaven. Because, what's the real reason for that? Because they do so? No, but they can carry creatures which have lived as human beings before, and these creatures can connect in symbiose also to the body of a blackbird, and they can also use the body of a blackbird to speak, for example, with me. Like they can connect in symbiose to human bodies, like I explained it in the first part already. So if you do not see everything I can see if I move my head around, you are blind compared to me. And if you want to understand universal communication, by watching my documentations, it would help yourself better if you have financial resources, if you would support me. Because then I'm able to support you with better documentations in the future. As long as creators which have lived as human beings before do communicate with you. And you would help these creators a lot, which have lived as human beings before and which want to reach their living family members. Because they also can use the complete area where I am, if they produce documentations with me, to communicate. And I have learned to outread them, and they can do that specifically. Very specific. Like I have shown you in the first part when I requested that they trigger the wind specific. I also can request that they bring a blackbird to say yes, or a swan, or whatever. Because they're able to use the complete natural environment. And the lack of equipment, the slow internet I'm working with, the blackbird is coming back, I'm trying to when I spoke that out, the blackbird was on the other side. It was flying to the other side when I filmed the last time. Now it came back and is sitting over here in the tree. Okay? That you do understand that. So it's the same with clouds, for example. At the moment we do not see clouds. Okay? This is from the airplane stuff. That's not an ordinary cloud. But on a cloudy day, they can use clouds to communicate with me, because they can canalize the wind to the cloud, and then the cloud will present you a different picture. For example, if you look up here, hopefully the camera is filming. If you watch very close on a huge screen, you will see a small face in that cloud. And creators which have lived as human beings before can create such pictures in the sky. And I can request that specific, and they can do that specific. With better equipment, it would be also possible to make stuff like that transparent to you, because I would film everything I see if I would have enough equipment. And you could get all the different views, all the different perspectives. If I do not get the equipment and no financial support, that will never happen. Just because other humans which are unable to communicate with ancestors do not use their chance if people like me are trying to help. So, for example, now we spoke about the blackbird. Now it is sitting over here. See? It's turning around. See? So it came even closer. Hopefully the camera is filming. With this camera, if I hold it like this, I cannot even see what the camera is doing. So now it's flying away again. And that's just one example. For the people which are watching the video, please understand, and for a lot of people which never lived a life like me, or like people which live a life like me, regarding the level of consciousness and understanding how the natural environment can get used as a tool from creatures which have lived as human beings. You have to understand that these individuals, if they have the support and the symbiosis from other creatures which do have no body, so these creatures are invisible to you as long as they do not use other biological bodies, by influencing them and by controlling them. They can use all biological bodies. They can use the weather, and they can use all plant bodies also. So they can use everything you see. Everything you see, if you walk through your daily life, can get influenced or could get created by creatures which have lived as human beings before and which have lost their own human body. Let's talk about that stuff. So stuff which is not living, like the bench I'm sitting on. Can a ghost create a bench? Or to be more specific, a creature which have lived as a human being and which have lost his or her own human body. Yes, they can connect in symbiosis to the human body of a technician and give him the impulse, the idea to build a bench. They also can live in that human body when that human body is building the bench. So even that things can get created by creatures which have lived as human beings before. The level is, everything is possible. If you watch my videos also on the website sierraembassy.com, you have to be absolutely open-minded and do not judge wrong. Everything is possible, is right. That's cool over there. So, see, the wind level is higher and it's moving to my hand. That's a breeze, okay? The creatures which have lived as human beings before triggered the wind, and they did agree with that. They're using the high wind level. That's why it's staying like this in the wind. this tool over here also started now to come to my hand area. Understand that? Everything is possible. If you think something on planet Earth would be not possible, it's because you limited the way you think. You limited yourself, your possibilities in understanding things, in understanding universal communication. Everything can get used as a tool what is visible for you. Everything. Everything and every animal, every human, every living biological body. Let me say it like that. So I wanted to make that point clear with the equipment, because I think with the data I did publish a few years, and I tried my best to publish data which is good. I did spend a lot of energy in helping other creatures which have lived as human beings before, to give them the chance to speak out, to give them the chance to present themselves. And I look very sad at the fact that living humans did not help me in a way I did request it in the past. Because I'm requesting equipment, or at least financial support for equipment, for a long time now. And I could not find people which were willing to support that. And for you, the people which are watching the documentations, it's easy. You are blind if you want to understand this situation here right now. If I'm just filming with 2 cameras compared to me and compared to the creatures which have lived as human beings before, even if they want to make themselves visible to you do not give them the option. Of course, that's what I'm speaking out here in this video, is for the people which are rich, which could afford to support. Potentially your ancestors would like to produce a documentation to potentially reach you. If maybe, I don't know all details of the future, so maybe if tomorrow one of your ancestors will contact, would say, I would like to produce a video documentation to reach you. You who's watching the video. The risk that I have to tell them, well, see, I told another creator I produce a documentation with another creator and my PC is too slow, so I only can upload 1 video or 2 videos a day instead of 4 or 5. And because that is the sad situation, you will not get the opportunity. The risk that that will happen is extremely high. And that's sad for me. Because with support from you, potentially I could be in the situation that I could help much more living family members of these creatures and much more creatures. And for these creatures, it's also a very important point. Because the creatures I'm in contact with, they're in the same situation for years now. And the people which were watching the documentations, which came in contact with my data, they did not realize that. And I'm asking myself, how long should that be the situation before I find some intelligent people which are able to support me financially on a good scale, for good equipment, not the cheapest cell phone cameras. It's sad what I had to witness in the past years regarding the reaction from living people. If they came in contact with my data. Often it was very sad, and I could not see the specific support I would need as a human from other humans to then be able to help other humans better with the stuff I can do, which is universal communication, which is communicating with creatures which have lived as human beings before, what many people cannot do. And I look at years of wasted possibilities, because the public which do check my data, which do see my data, do not understand that, or at least have not reacted to all the videos where requested support. So in case you belong to the people which have money, maybe more than you need for your daily life, It would be absolutely great if you could contact me over the website siaembassy.com or my cell phone, and if you would be willing to spend money so that I then can buy better equipment. It would be absolutely necessary for me to then be able to help creators better which have lived as human beings before to produce better documentations. It would be absolutely necessary for all the creators I was in contact with in the past and which want to do documentations in the future with me. And all the creators which have lived as human beings before which want to potentially produce documentations with me in the future to reach their living family members. Because all of them would benefit from a situation when I would have much better equipment. If I talk about equipment, I spoke now about cameras. I spoke about microphones, but there's much more. There's much more. The wind level here could get measured. I have cheap measurement equipment for wind speed and wind levels. But there's much better technology on the market I cannot afford. But it would be important to produce data with these creatures on a science level so that people really could learn from that. If you are a scientist and if you're interested in weather, please contact me, because I'm sure you could learn from these creatures which have lived as human beings before and which are able to control the weather. If you are unable to communicate with such creatures, it's easy to understand you should contact me, because I'm able to do so, as you can see in the video material. Or you're not really interested in the topic. So please, if you're really interested, understand that point. If you have some money, are urgent, since years, need money to afford better PCs, a faster internet, better film cameras, better microphones, a better situation, a better backup for me to work with in general regarding equipment. It would be very nice, and you would help me by the act of spending your money, and you would help all the creators which have lived as human beings before, which would like to produce documentations to inform the public, because they're gonna use the equipment. Right now here, the creators which are triggering the wind, they're using these cameras, not only me. That's easy to understand normally, because they produce the wind to communicate to you. So I have a very sad lifetime experience in the past years, because I could not find support from other living humans. And I mean the specific support I would need. In that case, in that point I spoke about now, which is a very important point, money. And so if you are interested in universal communication, and if you have enough money, please contact me. I would really need some money to buy better equipment, and I could need it very fast, because many creators which have lived as human beings before and which have living family members would like to produce documentations where they present themselves, where they identify themselves, to send their living family members a live signal. And that's what the equipment gonna be used for as well. And you can see the wind is used on a high level, because creatures which have lived as human beings before, which have lost their human body, do agree to that, by the way. And what I'm talking about is, see, living families are sad for their whole life because they cannot have contact with the creatures which have lived as their family members before they lost their human body. And all the sadness is unnecessary, but they're gonna stay sad if they do not get the life signals from these creatures which want to reach their living family members. So with a little investment, you could make potentially families happy for the rest of their lifetime, regarding the fact that one of their family members have lost his or her human body, compared to a situation where they're going to be sad because of that. Because with such video documentations, these creators have the possibility to send a life signal to them. If their family members then see these documentations, where creators who identify themselves, who identify their living family members, all that, then they can receive a live signal with such video material. From there on, they can learn the communication. From there on, they are invited to ask questions. If these documentations will be never produced because I have a lack of equipment, and because my storage is not big enough to save all the documentations I have filmed, not even that is possible with the equipment I'm working with. Imagine that. There are creators which badly want to reach their living family members. Then they produce a documentation with me. They present themselves clearly, they communicate clearly, they want to reach their living family members. Then I walk to my PC and I realize the storage is full. So I have to delete documentations which are not published. And their living family members gonna stay sad, these creators gonna stay sad, and the only reason is because I could not find support from other living humans regarding finances. How embarrassing and sad is that? It's totally sad and embarrassing. So when I look back at the past years, where I did try to inform about universal communication, I look at a total fail. That's how I see it. If I look at the behavior of living humans which came in contact with my data and which did not realize that they could do something potentially for their own ancestors by supporting me. Because if I can inform better about ancestors communication, more people can learn how to communicate potentially with their own ancestors. It's that easy. It's that easy. So it's a fail if I'm informing 3 years, 2,000 people are watching my videos, maybe more, but no one of them do realize that, do react to all the requests they see in the videos, because there are many videos online where I request support, specific support. I would really need a financial backup from anybody. Anybody I can find is alright. I just need the financial backup to buy better equipment. So if you have enough money, please contact me if you would be willing to invest in equipment for me, so that I then can inform about ancestors communication better. And with that, you invest in a better situation where more creators which have lived as human beings before, which have lost their own human body, have the chance to speak out to the public, where they have a voice, where they potentially can reach their living family with such video documentation, for example. Let me check this. Can you reduce? You want to use a higher wind level directly. Okay. Again, this tool is going into the direction of my hand, because this creature, which have lived as a woman before, is agreeing to it. And this wind tool also, more wind is reaching the tool because the creature is agreeing to that. And I can ask now 100 creatures which have lived as human beings before, and my experience is that all of them gonna agree to that point. So if I request some financial support, I'm not the only one. All of these creators do request and ask for your help, for your financial support, to create a better situation for me, that I'm then able to help them better. To help creators better which have lived as human beings before with such documentation. Can you agree to that by using a higher wind level? And now that thing is getting lifted up more and more again. And that's how you can understand my request. It's not only for me, it's for It's for many, 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 many creatures, and many more, which have lived as human beings before, and which do often lose their voice because people like me do not have the support we would need to support them better, to speak out and to reach out for their living families. There's the next thing. As I said, I have no financial possibilities. So at the moment I'm producing documentations where such creatures, for example, use weather control to present themselves to the public, to reach out for their living family members. And if I can, I send the documentations to the family, or at least I inform them where they can find it out. If a family do not understand that directly, if I have no financial possibilities, I cannot explain it to them very well. If I would have a lot of financial possibilities, maybe more finances than I just need for the equipment which is badly needed, then I would be also able to travel to these families, to explain it to them there, and I would be able to travel with the creator which want to reach his or her living family members directly to the family. If I do not have the financial possibilities to travel, that's not possible. I lose a lot of time in my life as someone who could help a lot more because of financial problems. And that is stupid if not so many people can communicate complex with ancestors, but so many living humans are so sad because they want to communicate with their ancestors because they have lost their grandma, their granddad, and so on. It's an absolutely stupid situation I'm living in, as long as people which are watching my video do not understand that point, and as long as I do not find the right support. So in my situation I have 400 euros in Germany to live on, which means normally if you want to eat and drink 4 weeks a month, you need more normally. It's true. From this 400 euros, I were starving a week a month to buy these cameras I'm working with now. How long do I have to stop? Because I try to help creatures which have lived as human beings before to reach their living family members. How long do the society need to understand that? And how long do I feel punished from a society which is not supporting me because I'm trying to help creatures which have lived as human beings before? Even spending my social benefits on the little bit equipment I have instead of buying food from them. How sad is that? Think about that. That is my real high life. And that is high life I'm living with these creatures. That's my daily high life. So there are gonna be more videos like this online soon, and I'm gonna speak more about my lifetime experience. And all of these lifetime experience videos, I'm gonna try to produce a series, so a video series. And in this video series, I'm gonna try to keep it easy and relaxed like in this video. But the messages are important. If I look back at the past years, I think a lot of humans are totally unnecessary sad because they could be in the position to communicate with their ancestors. They could learn how they could be in the position. If we talk about topics like body sharing, there is a lot of negative part regarding body sharing. But ancestors, creatures which have lived as human beings before. As you can see in this video, they have many opportunities to communicate with living humans. They can use many different options and methods. So the people can avoid the problems in the area of body sharing by learning the other methods and to inform about the other methods better. Therefore, I would need more equipment. The creatures I'm in contact with would need more equipment. It's the most important message of this video. If you want to learn how to communicate with angels, ghosts, or ancestors, or creatures which have lived as human beings before, you can do that. You could do that. But think about what would be the logical steps to learn quick and easy. What about the idea to support those which are able to do so? For example, me with financial support for better equipment. Because then I can produce better input for you. You can understand it better in the other video documentations and you can learn more. And if you want to have a live experience here in Bonn, where I'm living in Germany, you can contact me. And creatures which have lived as human beings before, potentially your ancestors, can be reached and they can then present themselves live where you are here in this area and you can get your lifetime experience. But if you want to do that, you have to request that specific for me, because I have to help you there. If I should help you. That's very easy. To be honest, videos can do a lot. A lifetime experience is much more important, and because you can learn more from it than you ever can learn from books, videos, or audios. And that's logical. You know it by yourself if you think about other situations and your own life. Please do not get annoyed, but I'm gonna come back to the topic that I would need financial support also in other videos so long until I found what I need. What I need to help these creatures better which have lived as human beings before and which want to reach out for their living family members. And if I look back at my lifetime experience regarding the communication with creatures which have lived as human beings before, there's a lot more negative stuff regarding the behavior of the living humans. Because a lot of these creatures would like to transfer informations on a better level, on a better scale, so that living humans can understand that better. And they would like to transfer informations regarding science questions, regarding medical questions, regarding energy questions, and I mean electricity, how the cell phones work, your laptop, all that. So they would like to transfer knowledge to find new solutions in the area of green energy, for example. This is wind which is getting canalized here. The creators do agree to that, right? That's what you can see. You can see it in many videos on CIMC. How much are you paying for your electricity bill? And why? Why do you pay so much for your electricity bill instead of supporting somebody like me a little bit to then try to get the knowledge how we could get cheaper energy, for example, by wind energy, more efficient than it is done today in the year 2021 on planet Earth. Because creatures like the ancestors could support, so creators which have lived as human beings before, which have lost their own human body, they could support living humans with the knowledge transfers to find better solutions for energy, for wind energy, for example. And that would reduce your energy cost with your energy supplier, your electric supplier, that you get me right. So, can you trigger the wind if that's correct? And again, you see the wind is clearly triggered and the tool is moving in the direction of my hand. Okay? And that was specific, yes, because these creatures are waiting to see you informing others about it and taking the right action by yourself. What would I need now to get these knowledge transfers done with these creators? I would need professional people working in the field of green energy. I would need the technicians, which are now building up one bullshit system after the other instead of using that shit. It's not, I say one bullshit system after the other, maybe that was wrong, but it's not efficient compared to what would be possible. And that's why it's much more expensive than what it would cost if they would need the knowledge. Check this. Do you think the electricity bills of the people could get much reduced if the knowledge transfer is done, and if mankind would use the new knowledge to then create technique which could use wind energy better? And you can see the wind level is constantly going high. That's a yes. So your electricity bill is too high. From the people which are watching my video, your electricity bill is too high. What about that? Medicine. Ancestors communicated to me, not only my own ancestors, also ancestors of other families. They would like to transfer knowledge how special types of illnesses could get healed forever for mankind. Not for one patient, for all the patients which do suffer from a specific illness type at this moment in time. How high are your insurance costs, and why? And why do I not get the support? Why you do not try to reduce your own bill by receiving such knowledge? I'm open for talks. You can contact me anytime if you're willing to support me. And I'm willing to support all the civil societies and also governments, so on, as long as everybody receives help with that. In areas like energy and in areas like medicine and so on. If I look back at my lifetime experience, I look at many humans which do surround me in my daily life, and I think by myself, are these people which are watching my videos, are they too stupid to understand what's communicated here or what's going on out there? Why could I not find the specific support I needed in 3 years and more? How is that possible? That's what I'm asking myself. And I don't mean the specific support by any creatures which do not live as human anymore, so which do not have a human body by themselves anymore. I mean, I could not find the specific support from living humans I need. I could not find scientists which were intelligent enough to contact me for meetings, for example, to check this out here where it's happening. I could not find doctors to get the information I'm speaking about. How is that possible? I could not find people which were willing to support me financially. But everybody is willing to pay such high electricity bills over it. Imagine these creatures would canalize the wind to one of the electricity wheels, wind wheels, where electricity is produced. So specific like they do it here. The result would be the battery of this thing would be full after an hour or so. Now maybe it needs hours or days until the battery is charged. So it would be much more efficient to do all that stuff in cooperation. And I'm asking myself, when do the living humans, so also you do understand that, when that information is spread, and when do the people start to use the chances where I'm willing to support others, you. But I can only support you if you use your chance. And no matter what these creatures can do, no matter how good they can control the natural environment, all that, if you don't listen, if you don't use the chances, the chances are gone. For your lifetime. Potentially for the lifetime of your children, if that situation is not changing. I'm sure many people now watch this video and they do not even understand what I'm talking about, and that's sad. Creatures which have lived as human beings before, which do not have a human body anymore, which can control the natural environment, communicate it, they would do so to produce better green energy as humans would see it, and to reduce the costs for the nature for this energy as humans would see it. And that's what I did communicate for years now. And I'm, as someone who can communicate on such a high level with these creatures which are able to control the natural environment, I'm asking myself, how many years do I have to repeat that before I see that living humans start to react to that what's communicated, intelligent and smart? And that can only be to contact me regarding the stuff I spoke out. It's the only way, because I spoke about how I could help better with other creatures. So if you do not contact me directly, if we do not meet face to face, I'm sure you have not understood what I talked about. And that is my sad lifetime experience since years. There are going to be more videos where I speak about sad and good lifetime experience, and about stuff what creatures which have lived as human beings before can do. And there are going to be more videos online where creatures speak out by using the natural environment which have lived as human beings before, how they see things, because now they are so connected in symbiosis to the natural environment. So they can understand it much better as living humans, they can outread it much better as living humans, and they can use it. So much more of these video material will be online soon. You decide if it's going to be video material filmed with 2 cameras like this part of this video, or if you will see everything, if you will be able to understand more. You decide that. I need your support to present you everything I see in such situations when they communicate. I need financial support. So you, the people which are watching the videos, you do decide by yourself if you do contact me, if you want to get better video material in the future, then I need your support, your financial support. Or if you want to be blind compared to what I do. Thanks for watching, your Niall Sebastian Power Sieger. And that was my mom, Susanne Ilse Sieger. She triggered the wind, also with the support from other creatures which have lived as human beings before. Thanks for watching.